Welcome everyone to our 9th episode of our Kwento sessions. Today we had the opportunity of having the two Adings podcast, Marielle and Krystal, and just from Pinoys over the world podcast. And we'll be talking about something that's very taboo in our culture, which is mental health. To get started, let's do a little introductions, our name, pronouns, location calling from, and our generic question. If you could describe yourself in a Filipino food or dish, what would you be and why?
I'll go first.
Okay.
My name is Marielle. My pronouns are she, her. I'm from the Bay Area in San Jose. If I were a Filipino dish or dessert, ooh, that's a toughie. I would say pancit because she's underrated. Everyone, I would say no one really likes her, but I love her. um, and she's just a good, versatile meal.
Hi, I'm Krystal. My pronouns are she, her. I'm also based in the San Jose Bay Area. And I think maybe just because I've been craving it a lot, I would describe myself as the buko pandan dessert. Because I don't know, I'm wearing green right now. And I don't know, she's like really refreshing. And I've been told that like my personality, like my energy is very like up here sometimes. Yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Jess Wanich. I use he, him pronouns, calling in from Seattle, Washington. And if I could describe myself as a Filipino dish, probably lumpia, because I'm brown and I have a lot to offer.
I just want to say that all of your guys' food to describe yourself is like, I could see it just by like the personalities already. To like answer the question as well. Hi guys, my name is Chachie. Pronouns are she, her, and I'm from Hawaii. And the Filipino food personality would describe myself is same thing as Krystal would be buko pandan. Not because it's my favorite food, but it's just something so rare and authentic, and it's nice. It has all the you can add it into any dish, dessert, and it still tastes amazing.
I think for me, it didn't really begin until like late middle school or early high school. And like that's when more people my age started using the internet and like being like I said, exposed to those type of like messages. There was a lot of like positive quotes online. And I didn't really pay attention to my own until my friends, like my close friends, were struggling. And I saw that like what they were doing to help themselves. And I was like, oh, I never really paid attention to that side of myself. So that's what really got me into like paying attention to it. And I think now it's really important because like mind, body, and soul, they all go like hand in hand, right? To like it was you as a person and your well-being. But I think for me, like mental health has like a slighter like bigger portion that affects me. So I want to make sure like that's on top is like my number one like priority out of it all.
I guess for me, it started, or it just like never really like became a conversation that I had until like same with you, like until like one of my friends was kind of going through some stuff. Um, and then like that obviously got me like to think about like my own mental health. And I like also just grew up as like a very like emo kid. I would say like I listened to a lot of emo music. But like at the time, like you're like 10, 11, 12, like not really thinking about like what you're actually listening to. And then like once you get to high school and like all that teen angst, you start thinking like, oh, like why am I not happy? Like stuff like that, you know? But then I think like when I got to college, which was like same time around like your when you were in middle school, like 2013, 2014, because I like separated myself from like home, like I moved away for college for a little bit. And then like I don't know, like something just like felt different. Like I was never like happy or like satisfied or whatever. Um And then yeah, I think like since then, like 2014, 2015, it's kind of just like been something I've like thought about but never really like personally dealt with. Like in terms of like my own journey, I kind of just like brushed it off. I was like, okay, like whatever. If I'm sad, I'm sad. If I'm depressed, I'm depressed. It is what it is. And then yeah, I think, I mean, it's important to me now just because like it gets to a certain point where like you don't want to feel that way anymore. And you kind of do have to start dealing with it. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I would say I'm in a pretty good place about it now, and like very more like self-aware and like more aware of like what I'm feeling, and kind of trying to understand it a little bit more, especially like this past like year with the whole pandemic, and like just having that time to be alone with like all your thoughts, and having time to like really analyze it and like analyze what you're feeling.
Yeah, and I think for my mental health journey, like where it began, probably like growing up like in elementary school. Um, like I went to therapy, but at the time I didn't know like why or like what the reason was. But like looking back on it now, like there was a life experience that happened to me that like it didn't really, I didn't like understand the significance of it at the time. Um, but yeah, it was just like interesting because like when I look back at that time, like all I can remember is just like playing with like toys and stuff, and then the person that was like the therapist was just like asking me questions like while I wasn't really like paying attention. That kind of like led into like high schoolish, like seeing like other friends like struggle through it as well. So like I had a lot of empathy for a lot of like what like my friends or like classmates were going through, and it seemed like pretty taboo to talk about like other avenues of mental health as well, like such as like anxiety and depression. um, so whenever like I would hear of like friends that were going to therapy, like I didn't continue like therapy like since I was a kid, but like I would just empathize with that because like I knew like what that was like. When I started college, I really wanted to be mindful of that because I feel like it was stressed a lot about like, oh, like don't get burnout like on finals, like be mindful and like intentional about your relationships and just like school and everything you're balancing because it can be a lot. So I really wanted to spend time to like understand myself and just like be mindful of everything that I was doing, but I didn't like put in the time exactly to set aside time for myself, so to speak. So I could just remember like retrospectively, like looking back, like I was burnt out like all the time. And it's crazy because I graduated like back in June, and like once I graduated, I was like, damn, like why do I feel so like free? Like I felt like a weight was being lifted off me because like I didn't have to worry about deadlines or extracurriculars or anything. So that's when I told myself, all right, like I'm done with like all the responsibilities in my life. I need to like take care of myself. So I decided to go back to therapy, see what that was like for a bit. Because yeah, 2020 was just a difficult ass year. So yeah, I don't know. I was weird doing it again because like I felt like I didn't really get anything out of it, but it was nice to have someone like listen to you and just like have that conversation. So, yeah.
I think one of the things that you guys brought up, and I think I really appreciate you guys bringing it up, is the aspect of like we didn't talk about mental health until like this generation's coming around. Like everyone is on social media. You see a lot of posts about mental health, taking care, rest, and I think it's becoming something that's important to us. That I felt like as we continue like to strive to like have this sense of like understanding, especially like we all agree like last year had to be one of the most self-isolating thing in the world because you needed because we're human beings, we're like we need to be social, we need to like talk to someone, but like the pandemic kind of restricted everything.
I think for me, that's like something I'm still like working on, because like before Krystal and I started to Adings, it, I mean, like, yeah, like I knew I was like Filipino, like a Filipino American, but especially like in high school, it was something like I was just like not for. because I grew up around like a lot of like Filipino Americans, and I also grew up in like the swag, like the peak swagapino Filipino phase. And I was just like, this isn't for me. I don't know about that. But yeah, it wasn't until we started our podcast where like I actually took the time to like really think about it. And it's like still something I'm like kind of like unpacking and like unlearning a lot of like things and like values that we were taught like when we were younger. Mental health being one of them because it is such like a taboo thing in our culture. And it's like definitely something that's always like brushed off and not really just like brought up.
For me, I think I always felt like a sense of Filipino American identity, but it was very superficial, especially when I was younger. Like before, like Marielle said, before we started to Adings, it was very much just like, oh yeah, like we like Manny Pacquiao fights, like we're always gonna like hype him up. And whenever we saw like a Filipino American on TV, whether it's like a competition show or like American Idol or something, it's like regardless of talent, we're going to be supporting them. Whereas now I'm discovering that it's just there's not really one answer. Like my answer is that there's not really one answer because from the Philippines themselves, like there's so many different regions and so many varying levels of like how colonized they were and how like depending on what generation your family moved over here to America, like everything's so different. But personally, I think it's just like always expanding. Like every day I learn something new that not sends me into an identity crisis over the fact, but like just something new to like take in and consider and like broaden my understanding of what it is to be a Filipino American.
You love a good spiral though.
Yeah, and I think for my experience, it was like heavily on the Filipino side, but not necessarily on the American side. Just in the fact that like, so my parents like immigrated from the Philippines, um, and like my mom just being like super connected as she is, like she'd always like have me tag along with her like Filipino dance parties. So like I just remember like her like talking to all like the aunties and lolas and everything, and like I just have no idea what they're saying. Like, oh, is this your anak? I'm like, yeah, that's me. And then them like talking everything, but I still couldn't understand because like so my family speaks Bisaya, which is like the Visayas region dialect. Um, so yeah, I couldn't understand anything. But like they wanted me to like learn more about the culture and everything. So my older brother and sister like were born in the Philippines, and grew up there. So like I just remember like we'd have like family calls like over back in the day Yahoo Messenger, but we'd have our extended relatives on there, call on there. My mom would just be like straight shooting on like Bisaya, and I'm just like, what are you saying? I felt like embarrassed because like I was very like American, but like with my mom to like integrate me into those like social things, like I still felt out of place, and I feel like that's kind of like where I'm at now, just trying to reconnect with everything, and also like having been back to the Philippines, it's like every time I'm there, they know I'm an American just because like the way I talk, and then like being lighter complexion, and everything. So yeah, it's still like a thing I'm still trying to figure out, but still embrace my Filipino identity very much.
So Jess, was it is it also like kind of hard because like usually when like people see you as like a Filipino, they kind of just expect you to speak or like to know Tagalog. But like you said that your family's from Visaya and like your mom speaks Visayan. So was that like another thing you had to kind of deal with? Because you're the same, like you don't really know Tagalog.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
I was similar to Jess in the way I would when I was younger, I would say like phrases in Ilocano or some Tagalog, not very much Tagalog. But as I grew old, like the people like family would say like, oh, you know those words, or like,
Yeah.
look at you, like this little American girl knows like how to say these things. And I don't want to Actually, it kind of is pretty much like those comments, even
Yeah.
though I'm sure they didn't mean it that way. It kind of discouraged me from continuing to like say it because I was like, oh, if I say it, it sounds funny or like it doesn't
Mhm.
sound correct. It sounds like Americanized, like the accent. But
Yeah.
so that's why I don't think I don't think it's like not too late for me to like go back and learn, but
It's hard because
yeah.
me and my friends have tried to like learn Tagalog together. It's just not because it's like it's also one of those things where like you know certain words already. So it's like if you're starting from square one, then it's like, oh well, I already know this. And then you try to skip ahead and then you don't know anything.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I wouldn't necessarily like, for me at least, like, see it like as an obstacle or like a barrier, because like the Philippines is like super diverse. But I feel like in spaces like that, like it would be very like heavily like Luzon centric. Like you had to, or at least like the audience there was like those who can speak Tagalog, like those who like whose family like grew up in Pangasinan, like that. I just always like remember hearing that. And then when they're like, "Where's your family from?" Like they're from Bohol, like Cebu. They're like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Bro, like, where's my people at?" But also
Yeah.
just like being mindful about like the openness of that and just like the diversity of the Philippines region, right? And I feel like that's something I kind of had to learn too, just in the sense that even though like our families come from different places, like we're still like Filipino through like our customs, our traditions, like as different as they are, like there's still that like thing that weaves it together. So I've been very like appreciative of people like bringing me into their families and their cool like things that they do, and for me to share that as well with my families.
What you guys bring up as well as like language has so much part of our culture and identity, especially because like same thing as you Crystal is that I'm also Ilocano, and then like I think the moment when I I knew because I came here when I was 7, and I didn't really understand the I understand my culture until I went to college, because you know how the feeling of shame and of like, oh, what, why is everyone so proud of being Filipino? Because like all I heard growing up is all of the stereotypes of like, if someone speaks Filipino, there's an accent that comes along with it, and like you don't want to be like that. So over the time, like you assimilated because you don't want to feel discriminated. But I feel like there's in that kind of perspective now of that changing that narrative, like you don't need to assimilate to kind of like be your said culture and identity.
Mhm. And it's like a weird thing too, because like there's so much like glorification of like America in the Philippines. So like obviously like it's like, oh, like you speak American, how cool. But on the offhand, it's also like, oh, you don't even know your own language.
Mm.
So it's just like a weird, like you want one thing, but then you also want the other. So what do you want from me?
Yeah, and I think the idea of assimilation, like beforehand, like I feel like that's everyone's goal, to like fit in and not be like ostracized and everything.
Mhm.
But in one of the courses I'm taking, it's like multicultural education or something along those lines. And we actually learned that assimilation, like even though that's been the narrative for so long, it shouldn't be the goal. Cultural pluralism should, because assimilation just um, defaults to one primary culture you're embracing and just like ignoring and pushing aside your other one. So I think like as Filipino Americans, especially, like it's not just opposite ends of a spectrum, like, oh, like American or Filipino, like no matter what your family in the Philippines says. But it's like you can be both. Like obviously, like there's proof, like with all of us, like we are both.
Mhm. It's that little hyphen in between.
Yeah. The hyphen makes like such a difference.
Yeah, I think like tying into the assimilation piece, like growing up in Seattle, like Seattle's like very like white. So I just remember like I have like a unique story about that too, and just like when I was in preschool, like I was the only like Asian like in my preschool, and like I remember like I would point out to things like in Bisaya, and then they had to do like a parent teacher like conference one time, and my mom like always tells me this story, and that like the teachers couldn't understand what I was saying because I would say things in Bisaya. So they told my mom like your son needs to learn English to like continue to be here, unless like because we can't help it if we don't know what he's trying to communicate. So I learned like I need to like learn how to speak English or just like refer to things that way. And so like my mom would still like switch in between like English and Bisaya just to keep that connection, but she also knew that like in order for me to like quote unquote succeed or just like fit in, like I needed to learn English. And like that's the thing about like dominant culture, especially with assimilation, right? Because like the not the default, but like how white dominant culture like perpetuates through education, like immigration, like whatever it is. Like for me to learn English, I was assimilating through that way, and I can like still understand some Visaya phrases, but it's not the same as when I was younger as a kid. So the effects of that, man, really messes you up.
I don't know. I just think like Jess's story, like the way that your preschool said he can't stay here if like he doesn't learn English. Like I understand it's challenging, but it's like why would you ever turn away a child? I don't know, just personally because I'm aspiring to be a teacher. It's like that's not the like if your main goal is to help every child, like that just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know. It's just sad how like we're like our families are being told in order for them to make it in this world that you decided to be in, it's like you have to make them like us, but it's like that's not the case. It doesn't have to be like that. And I don't know, that's so frustrating.
Interesting point that you bring up there is I think, as I know, a lot of immigrants who do come here to the America is like they get placed into this program called ESL, and that's also that kind of like marginalize a lot of people. Is like you need to have better English in order for you to be accepted, and I think that kind of brings upon like it also ties in into our kind of identity because like you expect me to learn English, but then we forget our kind of language behind it.
I read this question when you sent it and I was like, what values did I grow up with? I think the one of them that came to mind was the importance of like honoring a commitment, because when I was younger, I was enrolled in a lot of extracurriculars, and it's like sometimes I'd be too tired to go, but my mom's like, you signed up for this, like you said you wanted it, and if we back out, like that just doesn't, it's not good. So I think in like preteen, teenage years for me, I was very like, that kind of took a toll on my mental health just because I was still very involved with a lot of things because I truly did want to, but having to spread myself so thin and like make time for like school and everything, that brought up a lot of stress, to where now that's translated as like it's okay for me to take time for myself, like just because like you want to do something, you can make it into a way it's like people need to understand you're putting yourself first, and like you can't help others if you're not at a place in your not at a place on your own to like be okay and be able to contribute, because you want to give 100% all the time, I think. So that's one way, I guess, like one of the values I grew up with, um other than just like be kind, be nice, and all of that stuff.
You can go, Jess.
Yeah, just going off the like give your 100%. I feel like one thing that I was taught was to like put others before yourself, but like something I've been hearing a lot now is to like the thing about the oxygen mask, right? Like you need to help yourself before you can help others, or like work on yourself before you can give your best to others. And I think I don't know, I don't want to say like that was like a toxic thing of just like putting others before yourself, but like I feel like I did a lot of that like in high school and college, and I think like for me to like neglect like my own like needs and like what I couldn't communicate because I would always like make sure like everyone else was like fed first or just like attended to first. like I didn't realize it had like an effect on my mental health until after like all that grind was over, right? And I think now I've just started to feel more intentional about it's okay to be selfish, like for self care, right? It's self love. Because to continue to give that, like that takes a lot of energy. Um, but to not be able to, have time for yourself is, like that slowly like degrades away too. Um, so while I do care about serving others, it is important to like serve yourself and know.
Yeah, I really love how you said like being intentional about it, especially when it comes to service, because if like that's what you grow up like knowing, and then you just become a people pleaser, but like the service loses its like meaningfulness, Whereas like if you're intentional about it, it's like you truly want to do this because it's serving like a good cause or whatever it may be. What about you?
I think for me, it kind of ties in with like what Jess was saying about like putting yourself first, and like people pleasing. But I guess like one of the like main values was just like showing up for family, like regardless, because that's your family. Um, and I just feel like sometimes that can be like very like obviously, yeah, like show up for your family, like show up for people in your life, but it can kind of get to the point where like you're showing up so much for them and it's either not being reciprocated or you're not showing up for yourself. And then that can kind of get a little toxic and like you can get in your head about like what's being expected of me, like in terms of them, who am I to like them and their and like how am I being perceived by them. um but in terms of how that's like shaped my mental health and like self-care, I've just in like the past 6 months I'm like just learning how to not care about what people think. I'm gonna do me, y'all do you, take it easy. uh, and like obviously that's like easier said than done. It's definitely has been like a trip, but yeah, just like taking care of me and like doing what I need to do to be healthier mentally and like still trying to like maintain like a solid relationship with like the people around me, because like obviously like if you're not like, and it shows like if you're not really taking care of your mental health, like that will become like a more like physical thing.
Yeah, like
And like
manifest itself in like
yeah,
different ways. Like, oh, my
yeah,
stomach hurts. And it's like, oh, because I'm like so stressed about this type of thing.
dude, when I tell you I didn't realize how bad my anxiety was until I started getting like stomach aches and like being nauseous. I'm like, why is this happening? But also just like in the way that like you're treating the people around you, like you come off as like irritable and like just like very standoffish, when it's like that's not who I am, I'm just my brain. Yeah.
It's like, here, have a Snickers, but like on a
Oh, but like
level.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow, it's like you're hangry but like you're mentally, I just need like love.
You need to nourish your mind and everything instead of just like your stomach.
Yeah. Ugh, that was a good one.
Thank
I haven't
you.
thought about that Snickers bar commercial in so long.
I think when you brought up to the point where like if you don't see your mental health as like a physical thing, like that's when it gets like that's when like like there's a problem, because I feel
Yeah.
like in the terms of like showing up for our family and
Mhm.
like being able to like, because family is really rooted in our culture.
I mean, I don't know if it's a common thread, but like the lack of boundaries has been difficult. But I think just like reflecting on it, like so like I lived at home like all throughout college. So like for me now, just like not being in school anymore, um, I'm still living at home, so it's just like I tell my parents like, yo, like I'm working from home. Like, please do not like come in or like barge in for whatever reason unless like you're like dying or whatever. But just like also making sure like I'm able to communicate like that expectation. And I mean it's hard too because like being the youngest are like, oh, what do you know? Like you're not like in charge. You're not the boss here. But like also having ownership of yourself and like your own responsibilities and showing them that like you've been showing up, that shows like you're an adult, like a full on grown ass adult. Sorry, yeah, I just want to stress that. And I think that's important because a lot of the time, I don't know, like if it's a common thing in, like Filipino families, but like boundaries can be like overstepped. So for me, at least, I find it necessary to communicate like where I want to like draw the line.
Yeah, I definitely think communication is like super effective when people are able to do that. Because like me personally, the minute I have to talk to my parents about something like kind of serious, I like immediately my voice cracks, like I'm crying without even realizing. But like the same thing with like, for example, like the example of working from home, those tangible boundaries where it's like I leave a sign on my door saying I'm doing homework, please don't come in. Um, my parents are very receptive to like my mood, like if my door's closed, because it's just like, you know, everyone needs their own little bit of privacy, especially now, like when everyone's just been cooped in one spot for a year. It's definitely got me thinking now, like right now, about like how I can set up those boundaries, because they are important. Like I feel like maybe I'm just, I don't know, I don't want to like generalize, but when people like in our community, it's very, since it is a taboo, especially with the older generations, like they'll most likely just like bubble up and like explode, and that's more damaging than just like having little bits of like conversation here and there to like hear each other out.
I think this one's like a hard one for me to answer because I'm like working on establishing those boundaries, because like as the youngest, they've just been like overstepped my entire life. So it's just like it kind of just gets to the point where it's like I'm not even doing it. I'm just gonna leave. Um, so yeah, I mean, I was like obviously communication's like a very big one. I don't know how to do that well in terms of like family things, but you know, we're working on it. 2021, we're fixing our mental health.
I think like sometimes it's gotten to the point where like I want to have a conversation with my parents, but it's like just too much, like with
Dude,
like
yeah.
the blubbering or whatever. So I'll like write it out or like type it out in my phone, because I was like, you can read this without like any distraction or whatever. Or like sometimes I'll think of just like slipping a letter under their door. Like, but like yeah. Just we're working on it.
It's all a work in progress.
Yeah.
That's all that it is like to emphasize like what Jess said, like there's a lack of boundaries, honestly. It's because we live we live in such a multi-generational household where it's it's to the point where we're always trying to have this kind of this utang na loob, especially like you have to give something back, and if you don't, then you're bringing shame to the family. It plays a toll on us, and if we don't kind of take the time to communicate of like what we're feeling, what we're going through, like it's not. It's going to be like kind of pushing on us, and it's gonna push us away from our family. And I feel like that is like kind of like what we kind of see what's going on with like this generation and the next generation of like our family, and like
the whole idea of respecting your elders but not receiving that respect back, like that just like messes with you, because how do you expect me to respect you when you won't even like respect whatever like boundary I'm like setting? Like if I don't like something, or like if I don't want you to like do something to me or for me, why do you get mad?
Yeah, I think that's why also I get so like I get caught in this cycle because of the respect your elders kind of thing. And it's like they don't, I don't know if they mean to do this, but like the guilt trip you kind of get put on, where it's like oh we like they don't ever have to say it, because like we're constantly reminded like in ourselves like they did all this for us, and it's just like I want to pay them back as much as possible, but like I don't want to hurt them. But if like I need space for myself to like just think and like not have them constantly like be with like next to me or like in my room or just like hounding on me for certain things, it's just like I don't want to hurt your feelings, but then my feelings are going to be hurt. But I think for me it's just like I don't know, I'd rather have my feelings hurt than like my parents, you know. But that's the conversation to be had with parents. I don't know how you would approach that.
That like whole thing. Oh, go ahead. No, you go.
No, I was just about to say, to add on to like what both you said, but like it's like a unspoken like not rule, but like it spills over into like friendships and like also like relationships too, like currently at least, because it's like you do something like for your friends or like people like that you love, and like you don't expect them to do the same, but like low key, like on the side, you're like, huh, like why didn't they like Venmo me back, or like why didn't they
Yeah.
like like
Yeah.
do this for me? It's like all that I do for you, but you didn't do that
Yeah.
for me. But like you don't say that obviously, but it's
Mhm.
just like things that you think about like during your tough times or
You
whatever.
just like hope they get the message like
Yeah.
telepathically.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you
Um,
gonna?
I think one thing that I kind of wanted to emphasize, and then like this question kind of like is something that is always um a work in progress. Is like even for me, like where I am right now, like you could see all the sign with I kept muting myself. I'm in the living room. I literally don't have any boundaries. Like my family is literally walking around. So like it's like that what you just said, like it's communicating that if I were to like do a podcast or like record on something, like communicating that oh I'm doing this here, can I have like quiet time to just but sometimes they don't understand because like what are you doing this for? Like what is this? Is it making you
Yeah.
money?
oh yeah, my parents don't know I do a podcast.
Okay, see what you know how I like put signs on my door, like I said, like doing homework. I had to start doing ones that said recording, please don't come in, because I was like, I'm not gonna be doing I'm not gonna be
Yeah.
taking a test on a Saturday or something.
Mhm.
And so eventually, like my mom caught on and she was like, "What are you guys doing?" And I was like, "Marielle and I just talk to each other."
We just have little therapy sessions
Yeah,
together.
and then eventually, like while we were recording once, I heard her ask my sister, like, "Do they have a podcast?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh."
Your mom knows what a podcast is?
Yeah, I think she listens to them apparently. I
Oh,
don't know.
that's
But like
cool.
she keeps like asking me like to listen to them. And it's like as much as I love
Yeah.
that she wants to be involved in stuff, it's like some of the topics we go over are like not things I'm comfortable with her like knowing how I feel about quite yet. So it's like, yeah, I
And
don't
then
know
it would be
why.
like brought up in like the car ride home or something. It's
Oh, for
like
sure.
no
Do your parents
escape.
do this too? Where it's like, or at least maybe when you were younger, like they'll wait till like you're in a car or something where it's just you guys and it's like, come shopping with me or whatever. And then they like ask you questions like about like relationships or just like things like you don't really want to talk about, but it's like you have no choice unless you pull like a ladybird and just like jump out of your car. But like
the lady.
but like it's just like I know okay, trapped is a bad word, but it's like y'all literally locked me in this car. I have no choice but to talk about it. I'm just
Nah,
like, oh, I don't
100%
know.
relatable. 100%. Yeah. I feel like, once you have those like little moments, like they just like boom, 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 like lightning round
Mhm.
questions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I think for me, like my family definitely knows it's a thing, mainly because I had like a big mental breakdown in a Thai restaurant on my 25th birthday. So like my mom knows that like something's not,
Yeah.
yeah. And like my sister has like gone through some stuff too. But I don't know. It's like because it is such a taboo thing, and I think because like religion plays a big part of it too, it's just like it's hard to bring up because you like the answer is going to be like, oh, just pray about her, like, oh, you just need to like read the Bible or like go to church more, which is like fine, but it's like such a like that's fine if like that works for you, but like it's such a cop out answer, and like it just gets like it's not like helpful or like
Mm.
healthy in a sense.
Yeah, like the cop out answer, like they just like graze it over or like kind of like, okay, we'll talk about it, but, like push it under the rug a little. I think that's for me is like a big point is like I would like to have these conversations, but I don't want it to be a big deal. Like I
Yeah.
don't know if it's just because um of like I don't want my whole world to shift because of this. I just want like people to like my family to be mindful of it or
Yeah.
like take into consideration like understand why certain actions or certain feelings like arise.
Or like sometimes I'll just like if you bring it up and they're probably gonna like bombard you with questions
Yeah,
and like
that's what
dig deeper into it. I'm like, no. Take what I'm giving
like, this
you.
is session 1. We can come back to like all
Take
the
what
other
I'm
stuff.
giving you. Don't ask any questions because that will just like send me down a spiral.
I was like, I didn't outline that far into my conversation.
I only thought about the questions you like might have like brought up, not like you asking like certain ones that were not in like the Google Doc, you know?
Yeah, but I definitely do think that maybe not just my parents, but like the generation of our parents the idea of mental health has become more apparent. I think because one standout moment was we were probably 3 weeks into the lockdown over here, and my dad was like, I think I like know what people mean when like they're depressed and like they just because they just stay inside and everything. And it's just like, whoa, I've never heard my like any of my family talk in like terms of like mental health or anything. So I don't know. It's like little by little I would approach it. Hypothetically, if I were to anytime soon, but we'll work our way up to that.
Yeah, I think the whole like going back to the cop out answer thing about like, oh, you can just like pray on it or just like sleep on it kind of thing. Like that can address like someone's needs, but is that truly like your own? And I think like that's one way I've been approaching like the conversation of mental health, and just like, you know, telling like my mom and my dad like, hey, this is like what I need. Like, you know, if you can't do it, like, all right, I'll just like do my own thing. But like, I don't know, I tried to like talk to my parents about like, hey, like let's talk about mental health, and they're like, well, at least my mom was like, oh, like, you know, mental health, like, you know, that's gonna go on your permanent record. I'm like, well, why is that even like a why is that even a problem? Like, that's not even like a
That's in
thing,
your
you know what I
permanent
mean?
record.
Yeah.
Hold on. That's fine, but like,
And I think because like yeah, like why is that a bad thing? Like it's not. It's just like the stigma around it where it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, they're gonna see this on my child's thing, and like what it like goes back to like the safe face of the family thing. Like what are they like, how is that gonna reflect on them, or like stuff like that.
Yeah, the judgment's like a huge thing, and like,
Yeah.
I don't know, comparing like your child to, you know, another family member's child. It's like, why you gotta like compare kids? Like, just focus on your own kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like think about it from our parents' perspective too. It's like like since stuff is probably like new to them as well, they don't know how to approach it. Like they have all like the good intentions of wanting to help. But I just think back to, I think I was 14. I like asked my general doctor, I was like, how do you know if you have anxiety? Like she told my mom that like I had like brought up that idea, like that question, and like, you guys can do like family counseling or something. I was like, this has nothing to do with my family. But like later on when we got home, I like went into my room because I was like, I don't want to talk about this. Like it's really like, I'm okay, I'm fine. And then I like heard her tell my sister like, oh, this is what happened at the appointment. And then I think it's like, because like I said, parents may not know how to address it or approach the situation. They kind of like use your siblings or like your friends as like a like an out like a back door, like like how do I do this without like going straight like attacking her or whatever. I try to think in the perspective of my parents a lot, just to like calm myself down, or like, okay, like they're not doing this on purpose, they're doing this because of like so many things have led up to it.
Yeah. And with the using your siblings as a cop out, my mom has 100% done that. And I get a text from my sister like a couple hours later. It's like, hey, so mom just texted me. She wants me to, because my sister does like social work stuff. She's like, oh, like, can you be your sister's counselor? And I was like, why would she even text you that? Like, no, that's so weird. Like, I'm not gonna tell you, like, I don't even tell like our parents have problems. Why did I tell you my problems? Like, no.
Yeah, it's like no one knows what to do, so they just keep asking other people. But it's like, yeah, you can come talk to me, but like when I'm ready. Like I don't.
It's just like a hard thing to talk about, because I think it's also like our parents, like obviously like they migrated here and like they've gone through like their own like things and like their own trauma, and like for them, like I'm sure that they just like haven't dealt with it. We're told like you're fine, like you're in a good spot, what are you like crying or like moaning about? And so like they just like don't know, like you said, like they don't know how to deal with it. I just think they also don't know how to deal with emotions. Like 90% of the time.
It's because like emotional health and mental health, like they've always been a thing, but like it hasn't been paid attention to up until like very recently.
Yeah, like you said, like we have to kind of think about like what they went through, and they're probably only doing this because like they went through this or whatever. But then at the same time, it's like, well, what about me?
One thing that I was thinking of is like, what if we show like or someone brought up in this past mental health conversation is just that, what if we they did a slideshow presentation about what they were feeling to their parents, like they made an actual like Google Slides presentation of like what are they feeling to their parents, and it was just like, I guess that's like a really creative way to like engaging and talking with our parents. But that was actually really random.
I know, because I
Really.
personally think like slideshow presentations are very fun to like
Yeah.
make. And it could also like that idea could like ease some kind of like the tension or nerves you
Mhm.
feel, because it's just like kind of not comic relief, but it's just like
Yeah.
kind of funny. Like, yeah, I'm giving a presentation in my living room to my family.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like it has to be a very specific situation though, because it's like, I don't know, some families might just be like, what? Or some families are like, why did you
Mhm.
make this whole thing? Like, you could have just talked to us about
Yeah.
it.
I actually made a PowerPoint presentation for my parents when I wanted to go to Disneyland after graduation.
Nice.
That's how I convinced them to let me go.
Okay,
And I
so they're
used,
effective.
yeah, and I used my Harry Potter wand. But yeah, PowerPoint presentations, we love them.
I think maybe another way too to like bring it up to families is asking how they feel first, or like asking how, like, just use the pandemic as like a transition,
Mhm.
like, oh, how has this made you feel, like, or like just an emotional like wellness check, first, because I think it's like the human disposition to be like, I would like to talk about myself, or like something like that, or
Yeah.
like it's easier to like receive information after you've like given some of your own,
Mhm.
just like a venting type of thing, where it's like, I feel comfortable telling you this because you've shared like that vulnerable part of yourself. So like not just talking at them, but like obviously like including them, and having an actual like back and forth between it.
I think for me, it's kind of just like doing things I enjoy and kind of having that time to myself. Like I like playing music. I love a good little sing-song jam session. Um, I do that a lot. um, Also because it's like nice weather now in the Bay Area, sitting outside in the sun, like wow, I get it. Why people tan and like they're so happy all the time. Also journaling. I think in the past year journaling has helped a lot. Because you're like actually like writing out your feelings and like what your like emotions are. Because for me, I used to keep everything in a lot, and it was getting to the point where like, or it has gotten to like points where I didn't necessarily like explode, but I think journaling in like the past year and kind of just like it's also just like helped me better understand like what exactly I was like anxious about.
To like ease my like anxiousness and everything, what I've been really big on is like telling myself like literally no one has it all figured out, like we're all just trying to do this together, like, and like kind of hand in hand, like try to visualize like the big picture, like, yes, I'm in my room, in my house, my neighborhood, and like just extend that all the way to like the world. And it's like, even though may seem very big, and like you should honor that, you should recognize that and be like, this is a big thing to me, but it's also not going to be the biggest thing. Like, I don't know, just personally it brings me like a like very like I physically like let my shoulders relax when I think
Mhm.
about how like in the big picture this is going to be like a very little thing. I've noticed that because I think isolation this past year has taken such a toll. Talking to my friends, like not even over text, but FaceTiming more often, like brings me such like a dopamine boost. Like I'll hang up and be like, I want to go see them. Like I want to like I want to hang out with them more. Um, but then journaling as well. I don't know, I'm a very visual person, so it's like even if I can't get the words out, I'll like put the colors down, or like doodle a little something that comes to mind, and just like take that off my mind and put it down, and putting it down, even though it's uh like a conceptual thing, it like physically brings the weight off your shoulders,
Yeah.
like I think you said.
Yeah, I totally second and agree with like all the things that you both do. Yeah, because I do like the same things too. I like to play music a lot. I think like a big thing too is like also like the Zoom like Netflix parties or like the game nights and stuff. But yeah, now that everyone's back, so I'm just like so happy to see people in person. Like the
Once
physical
we got those
connection.
vaccines,
Yeah,
it was game over.
but yeah, I also like to like make music on the side. So I've been listening to a lot of like lo-fi music, and I was like, dude, like I want to like make this. So I started like doing that like for the past couple of months. I have a channel too, just gonna shamelessly plug.
Do it.
As you should, as you should.
Yeah, but that's been my constant. Again, also just FaceTiming friends and family, and then also like practicing gratitude. So like I don't know if y'all know like the app Notion, but like I have this like template that I use like at the end of each day, and just like seeing like it like add up like day after day.
I would say like another self-love thing for me that I've started doing and like self-care thing is I started like writing out affirmations to myself. It's very corny, but like, sometimes you're not going to hear it from other people. So you might as well just like hear it from yourself. And so like on my closet door, there's like two of them. And when it says you are good enough, and then the other one's just like a quote from Amy Poehler. But like in my journal, I'll write out like, you are capable, you're deserving, you're fine, like you got this. Because I feel like a lot of times there's just like a bunch of like self-doubt and like imposter syndrome. Especially like when you're applying for jobs and just like going through life in your 20s, I think.
Yeah, I think with like what Jess was saying, like seeing it like all the gratitudes like add up and stuff. I think that's something I also love about journaling is that journaling doesn't always just have to be bad. When you're able to look through your journal and be like, oh, this was a rough day, but look how good it's surrounded in like the following pages, just like having a physical thing to look at. And I don't know, I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to add on that too, something like my coworker talked about was like, and also kind of goes into the affirmations thing you were mentioning, Marielle. But like, if you get any type of like praise or like, affirmation or whatever, like through work, an email or like a letter or something, like saving that as like a folder, like in your computer, because like you're gonna have those like down days, and I find like that's really helpful in terms of just giving me like a boost throughout the day, of energy, just being like, oh, I remember when I like did that one thing, or like, contributed to that thing that like got the thing done, all the things, because like that leads up to who you are and like where you're at today, and like all the things that make you who you are.
Blink-182 is right. All the small things, like they really just they really just
truth cares, truth brings. Wow.
Yeah, no,
Don't finish
like,
the rest of that song.
I love that point you made where it's like all the little things just like compile into.
Yeah,
it's really nice.
And I feel like at the moment, like when you like see that like little affirmation, I feel like depending on like where you are mentally, it could be like hard to believe it sometimes. So like having like a little snapshot of like what you did do and like what you accomplished, it's like nice to look back on. That's a good one. Maybe I'll do that.
I think a really great way that you guys kind of put together, and like it's something I also started doing is like like mason jars, like so anything good that happened like towards the day for me, I would like write it and I put it inside the mason jar, and with that like I put that every single day, and like it, it got so big, it got so huge that I put it in a box. So anything good that happened to me, like I would write about it and put it inside the box. And like what you guys said, like whenever I would have like those down days, like I just opened and I was like, oh, I did that the other time. Like that's why I'm here for. That's my purpose here for. It's like it's to continue doing what I do, and I feel like that's like our ultimate like goal is like we will always have our down days. We will always have someone misunderstood us. But like we're powerful in a way that we have a sense of purpose in someone.
That's so beautiful.
I mean, we have a podcast called Two Adings. You can listen to it wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow us on Instagram if you want to see little snippets of our like 40-minute episodes. They're only like a minute long, but they're cute. That's at Two Adings.
Spelled out too. TWO. Not the
T as in Thomas, W as in walrus. Also, we might be on TikTok soon at twoaudings.podcast, I think it is. I don't actually know what it is, but if you want more clips, they'll be there.
On the podcast train, I'll plug my podcast too. It's Pinoys versus the world. I do it with my co-host Harald. Bless Harald. He's currently traveling right now, but he'll be back soon. We just released our episode 3. We plan to have some cool episodes down the line. We just recorded Pinoys versus like Seattle tourist spots. So if you're ever in Seattle, we have a whole rank of things from S to D. If y'all know that tier system,
Yeah.
we rank the Seattle sites. But yeah, also listen to it wherever you get your podcasts. We release bi-weekly on Sundays at noon. Pinoys versus the world. We also have a website. That's pinoysvs.org. But we're not a nonprofit. Please support. I also make lo-fi music. It's palawan.lo-fi on
I love you looking
IG.
at